Welcome to the Health and Happiness Movement, a 28-day interview series that focuses on your whole body approach to mental health and happiness. My name is Jennifer C., your host, and today, as part of the Health and Happiness Movement, I am excited to be speaking with Dr. Paul Ward. Dr. Paul Ward is president of Too Young to Retire, LLC, and is an educator, business consultant, transitions coach, and workshop facilitator. He is a member of the Board of Directors at the Mental Health Association of Palm Beach County. Dr. Ward is also a researcher in the field of purposeful aging and a member of the faculty of University of Phoenix online mentoring students through their doctoral journeys. Since becoming a doctor of philosophy with a focus on organizational leadership, Dr. Ward has advised business leaders in Europe and the Americas and has a passion for conscious leadership. Living life on purpose and with conscious intent leads to greater fulfillment and a life of meaning. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, Jennifer. Pleased to be here.
I am so happy to be with you today and honored to be speaking with you, Doctor, especially about health and happiness. Doctor, how did you get into the field of health and happiness?
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I think I can trace this back to an inventure in East Africa. An inventure because it was an adventure, a walking safari through the Serengeti in Tanzania, but also an inner journey. The leader of the adventure was Richard Leider, and he's an author of many books on the power of purpose in the second half of life, and he's become a very important teacher to me. And then my own research into purposeful aging led me to Howard and Marika Stone, who are Purpose Prize fellows, but also co-founders of Too Young to Retire. And I took over their operations of Too Young to Retire a few years ago. And so my focus now is on the transitions people experience in the second half of life. And these transitions often are from long-term careers into encore careers, into volunteering, or whatever comes next. And these transitions can really affect our health and happiness. So that's a very short view of the journey that I've taken over the past few years and why I'm interested in health and happiness.
Brilliant. How does thinking about retirement affect our mental health and happiness?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we all approach retirement differently. Some people have been able to build their retirement nest eggs. They can look forward to Caribbean cruises and playing golf. But others have to continue working just to pay the bills. And others in between may be able to choose to work part-time or enjoy some more recreational activities. But wherever we are, this transition, it can be very stressful. Now, at Too Young to Retire, we like to encourage people to eliminate this R word, retirement.
Yes.
We really believe that we're all too young to retire. And we have a member of our family had an aunt who was a medical doctor in Manhattan. She was still seeing patients at 96 years old. And then
Wow.
in 2013, we had Dr. Leela Denmark, who died in Athens, Georgia, at the age of 114. Dr. Denmark was the world's oldest practicing doctor at 103 years old. So there's lots of stories about that. But back to the transitions. I think, most of my coaching clients are thinking about transitions from these long-term careers into whatever's coming next, whether it is to encore careers or to a more leisurely lifestyle, or maybe a bit of both. But thinking about retirement can be stressful. And it's not only about the money. It can be about the money, but it's not only about the money. It's also about our identity. Our identity is often based on our work. And this change of identity can be really traumatic. The identity shift can be a real struggle. Another thing, after retirement, those of us who are in relationships, couples find us all of a sudden, we find ourselves 24/7 in the same house, same time. Not quite as we expected. 24/7 might just prove to be a bit of a challenge with so many things changing all at once. And so for me, unless we can find meaning and purpose in our lives, these transitions can be really challenging, can be stressful, and for many quite depressing.
That's so true. I'm the oldest of 8, and my parents just retired about 2 years ago now. It's been 2 years ago. And they went through a similar stage for about 6 months Like, what are we going to do? All the kids are finally out of the house and stuff has slowed down for them. And you know what they did? They sold everything they had and went and bought a sailboat. And now my dad's training at age 67 to be a captain, and they're going to sail around the Caribbean.
Wow, that's a big transition. Sounds a lot of fun though.
It's a huge one, but I am proud of them because I believe what you said is true. You have worked your whole life, between jobs, careers, kids, and then all of a sudden it all just comes to a halt, and that is quite a change.
Yeah.
Now, you have been conducting research on purposeful aging. Why is living on purpose important to our health and happiness?
Well, yeah, this is a big question. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and therapist who wrote the book In Search of Meaning, which many of us have read or at least have heard of, he said, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. And I think many would say that the pursuit of happiness is futile. Health and happiness ensue. They're the results of our thoughts and our actions. So purpose and meaning are really important in our lives. And that led me to the research. And so let me just talk a little bit about what the research was, and then just share a little bit of what we're finding. So I set out to interview 50 people face to face, and I'm more than halfway through to my goal. But I published some interim results nearly 2 years ago now at the Positive Aging Conference held in Los Angeles. So let me share a little of what I found. I asked both qualitative questions, sort of open questions, and I asked some quantitative questions, some sort of Likert scale and listing questions. And in terms of the qualitative feedback, what people said, I think relationships really is important. Relationships with a spouse, family members, or friends. That was most frequently cited as what's most important in the lives of those interviewed. Another thing was good health and physical activity was viewed as important. And conversely, personal and family health issues are all too often causing major turning points, particularly for those in the second half of life. You just talked about your parents. Many of the people I interviewed were either experiencing or had experienced family health issues that have really changed their focus and changed their purpose for a while. And then, people often just refuse to consider themselves retired. They were keeping active with part-time work, volunteer activities, and when I asked questions about retirement, the people I spoke to really were sort of putting retirement and saying, well, that's not for me. Now, that may have just been the group I spoke to. I know the people I spoke to were mostly in New York and Connecticut, although I've sort of continued that research down in Florida now I've moved. And I'm looking to see the other side of that argument too. But it's interesting to see those of the qualitative responses to the questions. Now, in terms of the quantitative feedback, I asked questions with a Likert scale, strongly agree to strongly disagree. And in response to the question, to what extent are you living the good life? In many ways, good life and purposeful living is all, tied up. And 70% of participants rated their experience as an 8 or above on this 0 to 10 Likert type scale. So the people I have spoken to so far seem to be living the good life. In response to the question, to what extent is there purpose in your life, 73% rated their experience as 8 or above. And then another question which was a little more complicated but gave some important insights. I gave them a list of activities and asked, during the coming year, which 5 of these activities are the most important? I think there were 13 or so different activities. And the top 3 that were cited, number 1 was spending time with family and friends. The family, friends, relationships are all really important. The second one was using your abilities to accomplish things that matter. And I didn't ask the question about purpose. I asked it in a more general way. And then the third one was helping make things better for others. So, you can see where people's mind is at as they're into this second half of life. And if I look at the other end of the scale, the 2 least frequently selected activities The one at the bottom was ensuring you have enough income to last the rest of your life. People that I spoke to said, okay, well, I am where I am, and I'm managing that. And that's not the top of my mind. And the second to last one was working to generate a satisfactory salary from a full or part-time job. Now, that may be biased from the people I spoke to, but it was just interesting to see that people were, really focusing on family and friends and doing things that matter than on the financial activities. And I just wanted to share one experience. I just met a lot of people, many of whom were caring for family members. And I met a wonderful lady as part of this research. She said, for 5 years, I took care of my dying husband. That was my whole life. And then after his life ended, it took me a whole year really to find myself. Now, I interviewed her. She said, well, I'm back writing books. And when I met her, she'd just got married again at 80 years old. So
that is awesome.
Well, she was just a wonderful lady.
Yes.
But for many of us, purpose or why we're here is often about caring for others, particularly as we get older and our family members, are in difficult situations. So that was just really an insight in some of those findings. I can obviously spend a lot more time, but I think if listeners want to really get more about the research, I just invite you to visit purposefulaging.com. And you can certainly contact me via that website for more information, and I can provide the summary of findings that we presented a couple of years ago. But hopefully that just gives an insight into some of the things that the research is showing up.
Definitely, it does. And I like where you were talking about purpose, I'm finding purpose, and especially with this lady you just spoke about, and it gives me hope as well for I have my mother-in-law, and she did the same thing. She cared for her husband. He had cancer, and it was a process, and for 3 years really she had to do everything, and he died a couple years ago, and she has been a tremendous help. We've actually taken care of her, and I had a surprise little girl, and she helps out a lot with that. But I have found that her having that purpose of being able to be a part of our family and help with our daughter and going out and doing activities with us, it has changed. Like, she's come alive again, and she's 62. And I am so excited for her. And the other day I was talking to her, and she's ready to start. Yeah, she'd like to get out there and get married again as well. So I love when you said that age 80, she did get remarried. That is awesome.
Well, I think it's great that people are having those relationships, but I think it's also important, people talk about vision and purpose and calling, and it's not about having, a grand calling. Now, some are called to do some wonderful work in the world, and there's some great examples of that. But for many, there are some very simple things, and, knowing that your whole purpose for this, coming few months, years, is taking care of someone who you care about. I mean, that's a really important purpose. That's what gets you up in the morning, to care for that person. And so it is about, being clear about what's important to you. And it may be for others that, there is a grander calling. There is something that you can care about. But so often today, it's about people who are, taking care of others. And that's so important. It's all about relationships.
True. How would you compare purposeful aging and conscious aging?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And first of all, both for me are important to our health and happiness. My friend Ron Pevney, I always struggle with his second name. I don't know why. But Ron's written a book called Conscious Living, Conscious Aging. And it's an interesting, well-written book. And his real focus is on conscious eldering, which is a term that really resonates with me. And he's looking at people who are really, beyond the retirement phase, I think. But, he really focuses on this conscious living, conscious aging, conscious eldering. And Ron describes being conscious or becoming conscious as about becoming more aware and about seeing ourselves from an eagle's eye view. Now, I'm doing work in the field of conscious leadership, and I've sort of identified 3 phases of consciousness, again, to help people understand. I mean, consciousness is such a complex area, and it's hard to define. But I defined 3 phases: noticing what's going on around, setting intention, and acting responsibly. And I identified 10 practices, and I think we've probably got time for me to just briefly touch on them
Yes,
as
please.
we go through this morning. Without sort of delving too deeply, each of those three has three practices. So when you think about noticing what's going on around you, it is about becoming what I call about becoming wide awake. So it's about sensing. Sensing is about using our senses. A lot of it's about listening deeply, using all our senses, being alert to the changes in our environment, in people, in ourselves, and recognizing the need to sometimes to just stop what we're doing and be more mindfully aware of our surroundings and without judgment. So sensing is important. Learning is also important for noticing, being curious, seeking, receiving, giving feedback, learning from our experiences, taking time out to say, well, what did I learn from what happened today? And then the third practice within noticing is living, being in the moment. Many people have got a meditation practice. Mindfulness is becoming more important. So that, for me, is, the mindfulness practices of really focusing on being in the present moment is important for noticing. And then if I think about setting intention for me is about conscious decision-making. First of all, it's about exploring opportunities, considering opposites, looking at different perspectives, looking at things from a different point of view. It's about thinking possibility thinking, positive thinking, really believing in possibility and abundance and not scarcity. And then the third practice within setting intention is around committing to action. So clearly defining intent, aligning our response and direction with our purpose, and committing to acting responsibly. And so acting responsibly, the third area, for me, I identified three practices. So speaking candidly, speaking your truth, and also appreciating others. But really speaking your truth is an important part, being candid. We often hide our true feelings. We don't always say what we think. I encourage people to do that. The next one is practicing integrity. So really being authentic, being yourself, not trying to be someone that we're not. I think we are often, and I'm guilty of this, particularly during my career days, of really trying to aspire to being something I'm not. So really practicing integrity is important. And then taking responsible action, taking full responsibility of all aspects of our lives, and supporting others. So responsible action is also part of being conscious and being a conscious leader. So that was the 9 practices, and the 10th is really combining all the practices of noticing, setting intention, and acting responsibly all the time, doing it all the time. So for me, there are many similarities between conscious and purposeful aging or purposeful living. And I see purposeful as being a part of being conscious. And knowing why, we talk about purpose, but knowing why helps me with noticing what's going on, helps me with setting intention, and it also helps me with acting responsibly. So that's just a simple model for conscious, what I'm using in terms of conscious leadership, and I think we're all leaders, so I think it's relevant as we think about conscious living and purposeful living.
So true, and these are principles that are powerful and can use at all ages.
That's true, yes.
Doctor, you have identified 10 principles for purposeful aging. How does living by these principles affect our mental and physical health?
Yes, I'm into 10s. I know that there are a lot of them, but I'm into 10s. I like the round number of 10. 10 principles. So let me very quickly list them, and this is a whole day workshop experience, so we can't cover them all in great detail. But I'll list them, and then I'll just dip into a couple of them to just examine what they might mean. And so the principles, and some of this comes out of part of my research, starts with know your identity, which we talked about just now. So know your identity. Dream the impossible dream, have a clear, and nobody needs to write these down. These are all on the Purposeful Aging website. So if you're listening, you wanted to capture these, no need to write them down. You can get them on the website. So know your identity, dream the impossible dream, have a clear and compelling vision, really knowing what is important to you, performing with passion, value your values, follow your purpose. Don't worry about the money, and I'll spend a little bit of time on that one in a moment. Live strong, fit, and sexy. Bring spirit to work, and embrace your community. So those were the 10 that I identified, and let me just spend a few minutes dipping into a couple of them. So first of all, knowing your identity. We talked a little bit about that just now in terms of these transitions from, who we were, what we did, to who we're becoming. We live in a time of identity shifts. Many of us are transitioning, all with a different emphasis. Some of us are going from parent to friend. You mentioned people that their children are leaving home, so we're changing our relationships with our children. We're changing from business leader to community volunteer, from employee to entrepreneur. From caring for children to caring for parents. I mean, there are just so many identity shifts that we're going through. Now, I love Alice's adventures in Wonderland, one of the stories that I loved when I was a child and continue to. But in the story, when the caterpillar asked Alice, "Who are you?" she replied, "I hardly know, sir. Just at present. At least I knew who I was this morning, but I think I must have changed a few times since then." And I think we're all going through those changes, not necessarily quite as quickly as Alice, but we are going through those changes. And I want people to know who they are now and who they're becoming, not so much who they were. So, when people are asked, what are you or what do you do? Not to say, well, I'm a former something. Not saying, well, I was a teacher or I was a salesman. But really thinking about the present or the future. I am a writer. Or I am an entrepreneur. Now, you may not be there yet. That may be aspirational. But really talking about who you are today rather than hanging on to that identity of the past, which, if we've left it behind, we do need to let go. You have to let go to let come. I mean, that's the whole principle of that. And it's not easy. It's not easy. But one of the self-image exercises I use with my coaching clients when we're working on identity. I just wanted to share that. It's a very simple exercise, and it's something that you can all do at any time. But you just simply take a sheet of paper, draw a line down the center to create 2 columns. And the top of the left-hand column, you write how I see myself now. And the top of the right-hand column, you can write how I would like to be. And then you can list your perceptions of yourself now in terms of areas such as ability or competence, relationships, income, all sorts of things, but just your perception of where you are. And then on the right-hand column, you write down how you'd like to be in the future. This can lead you into dreaming the impossible dream. And for me, it's all about possibility thinking. So just a simple exercise to help us get from where we are to where we want to be. So that was the first principle I wanted to dip into, and I said I'd come back to don't worry about the money, and this one's it's not about don't care about the money. It's not that we don't care, but don't worry about it. And for me, I'm a firm believer in taking care of our finances. I believe in avoiding debt and saving a percentage of every paycheck. Using the tax advantages of a 401k, saving for retirement, all those things. But worrying about the money can be so debilitating. The Pros of Money is a chapter in Howard and Marika Stone's book, Too Young to Retire. And I'm in the middle of writing the second edition of the book. And it includes a section on having the right relationship with money. And right relationship means accepting that we don't control everything about life. It's about managing the subtle inner tension we carry about money. And I just wanted to share a story. Your comment about your father going off and becoming a captain of the ship just reminded me of Claude, and Claude was one of the people I interviewed, and he's given me permission to share his story. Now, Claude was 84 years old when I first met him here in Florida, and he told me his story. He had spent 25 years sailing the South Seas on a 38-foot sailboat, which he had built out in California. And he said the boat was where his backyard was the ocean. But he said, money is something I never worry about. I found out when I was very young that you should follow your spirit without hesitation, and the universe will always rearrange itself to accommodate your picture of reality. Now, here's someone else who just got married. Actually, he was 80 at the time. He's a little older now, but he was 80 when he got married. And as he said to me, not for the first time, and I won't tell you how many, but he'd had a few. But he described his life with his new wife as the most beautiful thing that has happened to both of us. Now, I'm very fortunate. I see this wonderful couple in church here in Florida, and they're just a great couple. But his story about his ocean sailing and his philosophy about money really resonates with me. And so the whole philosophy of don't worry about the money is really important.
I love that. What a beautiful story. Wow. And it's so true.
It is, yeah. Now, I just have one more, which if we have time,
yes,
I'd
please.
just like to share, because it's a bit of a theme for all of the conversation this morning. And this is follow your purpose. And as you must get a sense by now that purpose is something really important to me. So follow your purpose is really important. And Simon Sinek is the author of the book Start With Why. And interesting, I met him just a couple of weeks ago at a conference, just an unusual character, very much in the business world, but a lot of what he says is very applicable to all of our lives. And he said, it doesn't matter what you do. What matters is why you do it. And really, the purpose is the why behind who we are and what we aspire to be. And, without purpose and passion, I think success in life is going to be limited. And another of my teachers is Neil Donald Walsh, who is the Conversations with God author. And he says, there's no blackboard in the sky on which God has written your purpose, your mission in life. That blackboard just doesn't exist. Your purpose is what you say it is. Your mission is the mission you give yourself. And I think that's important. As we talked earlier, sometimes our purpose in life is to really take care of somebody. And so it's good to have a purpose, whatever that is. But I encourage all my clients to develop a purpose statement of 10 words or less. And then you can check everything you do against that purpose statement. And you can ask, if I do this, am I truly living on purpose? So, it's just a reminder that, we talk about calling and meaning and purpose. And, it's up to us to define what it is. And it might change. We might get an inspiration that says, wow, I really feel passionate about doing this, whatever it is. And so it's an opportunity for us to find and follow our purpose. So anyway, I can talk about 10 principles all day, but let me stop there because we probably haven't got time to get to all through 10. But there's a lot to think about as we try and live by these principles.
It is, and you're so true, or so correct, and you could go on all day. There's so many wonderful nuggets out there and so much to learn, and I think continuing that growth and always learning. But Dr. Ward, thank you. This has been another incredible segment in our series. But before we close, my audience and I would love one action item we can implement starting today to get us on the right path to purposeful living. One action.
So I'm going to just extend that just a little into 3 questions. Because, living the 10 practices of conscious living, I think can help. It certainly help, working towards better health and greater happiness. But I'd like to leave you with 3 questions to ponder, and they sort of capture a lot of what we've talked about today. So who am I? Why am I here? And the third one, how can I help others? And so, who am I? This is this identity question. We need to identify and distinguish between who we really are today and who we aspire to be. And I think, I spend a lot of time thinking about that as I go through transitions. I've been this, but I am this. What do I really want to do? I mean, particularly as we get older, I know we're living longer, but it's still, life is short. There's lots to do. So, this question of who am I is important. And then why am I here? This is the purpose question. Why am I here? And the questions I have my coaching clients consider is, what do I really care about? And this question of, what if you were given $1 million to be used for something you're really passionate about that would make the world a better place? How would you use that money? How would you bring meaning into your life? So the why am I here question is really important. And then the third question, how can I help others? Or another way of putting that, for me, a question I ask sometimes is, how can I serve? How can I serve others? And you can't help others without helping yourself. And I really mustn't let this interview go by without quoting Winston Churchill. I come from England originally, and of course he's one of my teachers. But he said, we make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. And I think that's really important. So, we're all connected technologically today. We haven't talked much about the sort of social media. But the fact is, people are often more lonely than ever before. And so one of my passions is to convene conversations that matter. Our Too Young to Retire facilitators are convening groups around the world. We're having conversations with others, listening deeply. And when we're doing that, our inner voices, the mental chatter that goes on, can be drowned out. And I think our mental health improves. And just one other thought, you mentioned at the beginning my involvement with the Mental Health Association of Palm Beach County, where I serve on the board of directors. We have a Peer Place Community Center, which is a community of friends supporting wellness and discovery. And conversations facilitated by peer mentors really provide a wonderful resource. So, the thing I would leave you with is, having those conversations that matter, that really matter, can enhance our health and happiness.
Thank you, Doctor. Well, everyone, if you have not checked out Dr. Ward's website, I strongly recommend you to check it out at tooyoungtoretire.com. Doctor, is there anything you want to really bring attention to, maybe highlight on your site? I know you mentioned it a couple times, but is there anything else?
Well, the site shows a little bit of what we do. There is a resource page where you may be able to find a facilitator in your area. Facilitators have been through a series of training, and they've been certified, and they're in most states around the United States and in a few countries around the world. And so you can contact them through that resource page. And not all are active, but many are. And so that's a way of finding someone in your own area to work with and to convene these conversations that matter.
This has been terrific, Dr. Ward. Thank you again for being part of the health and happiness movement. Please remember again to check out Dr. Ward's website, tooyoungtoretire.com. Thank you, Doctor. And again, this has been Jennifer C. and Dr. Paul Ward with the Health and Happiness Movement, a whole-body approach to mental health and happiness. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Jennifer.